Greetings and welcome back to Room 303 and our talks with Walt, as we are calling our readings through the deathbed edition of Walt Whitman's Leaves of Grass. We turn now in that deathbed edition of Walt Whitman's Leaves of Grass to Song of the Rolling Earth, passages 2, 3, and 4. We're going to treat these as a unit. We've called this poem Whitman's Dance with Logos, and his playing around. Can I use that? I think he's having great fun with the idea of words and meaning, and to that degree I think we'll have a lot of fun. Now, the assumptions are that you've been with us at learnstrong.net. Down the left-hand side, Talks with Walt is our playlist. Everything from inscriptions all the way up through and including the introductory set of comments on rolling, as well as section number 1, which we treated as an entity unto itself. Now, our background here is just to simply point out how amazing this poem will open up onto and into itself. I also want to point out that I have said this to you guys before, that T.S. Eliot and reading T.S. Eliot, we've given a whole bunch of lectures on for quartets at learnstrong.net. I'm going to try and prove that this lecture, that Eliot was very influenced by especially this poem of Leaves of Grass, and I'll do my best to try and make that observation. We turn now to the opening of passage 2. And again, I wish I had the time to just read all this with you, because it's brilliant, brilliant poetry when read without any interruptions, but we just don't have the time, so I'm going to go ahead and just jump right into it. Hey, do you guys remember, in starting from Paumanok, passage 13, passage 14, early on in our discussion, do you guys remember when we were playing around with this one? He says, "Behold, the body," this is the end of passage 13 of Paumanok. "Behold, the body includes in it the meaning, the main concern it includes and is the soul. Whoever you are, how superb and how divine is your body or any part of it." And then passage 14 opens for Paumanok. "Whoever you are, to you, endless announcements." Notice this "whoever you are" echo will come back now with passage 2. Whoever you are, motion and reflection, are especially for you. The divine ship sails, the divine sea for you. And of course, this use of divine, you'll remember it as the last line of passage 1. The divine ship sails the divine sea. Notice now we'll play this game. Oneself I sing, by the way, the laws divine, the very first poem that we encountered. We'll play this same game of divine, okay? And then he will repeat it. Whoever you are he or she for whom the earth is solid and liquid. Notice the brilliance, almost like Taoist-like, yes, of Lao Tzu. And you can think of the yin-yang symbol. Notice that we're always playing games of bringing together polarities in Whitman. He's one of the greatest poets to play at that, and I love how he plays this here. Whoever you are he or she for whom the earth is solid and liquid. You are he or she for whom the sun and moon hang in the sky. For none more than you are present, are the present and the past. For none more than you is immortality. Each man to himself and each woman to herself is the word of the past and present and the true word of immortality. And of course, right away, we said we were going to play around with T.S. Eliot's 4 quartets and Bert Norton. Time present and time past are both perhaps present in time future, and time future contained in time past. If all time is eternally present, all time is unredeemable, but what might have been is an abstraction, perpetual possibility, blah, 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 blah. I mean, go back and look at those lines. We've given full lecture, and I really believe that these lines are very much influencing T.S. Eliot, right? And then he says it, each man to himself, and each woman to herself. Notice the balancing and the inclusivity. Is the word of the past and present and the true word of immortality. No one can acquire for another. Not one. Not one can grow for another. Not one. Notice the use of the dash, by the way, in those 2 lines. And we have to think about Song of Myself, passage 46. Not I, not anyone can travel that road for you. You must travel it for yourself. This empowerment of the individual is so central to our reading of Walt Whitman. And then notice, we're going to get an interesting little list here. And Whitman, I think, is having some of the best fun in all of Leaves of Grass right here. He says, the song is to the singer and comes back most to him. Now, it'll be interesting that the opening line of passage 3 will be him or her. It's interesting that he doesn't play the game of him or her here. At the end of all of these lines, it's him. The song is to the singer and comes back most to him. The teaching is to the teacher and comes back most to him. Now this is interesting. In other words, as important as the profession of the art is for the artist, the singer in this case, it's more important to the artist than it ever is to the audience. What a fascinating idea. The teacher, and I told you Whitman was a teacher, right? The teaching is to the teacher and comes back most to him. I hope that I myself am listening to this line. As much as I share this information with you guys, for me, it has to be even more important because I'm the teacher, and it always comes back to me, even more so to be the case. And then, strange word order. Look at this. This is so remarkable. The murder is to the murderer and comes back most to him. What? We were just talking about songs and artists and teachers, and now all of a sudden we're to murderer? But I think, following, of course, the great Dostoevsky's Crime and Punishment, the idea here that he's saying is that everything in the end redounds back to the perpetrator. In other words, in the end, the murderer has to live with her or his action or their action. And then from murder we go to theft. The theft is to the thief and comes back most to him. And then we're back to strange. The love is to the lover and comes back most to him, which is a brilliant idea. I mean, go back to the lines about love from the prophet, Gibron's prophet. As much as is given, so much more is received. And how brilliant that word picture is that he plays with there. The gift is to the giver and comes back most to him. Notice the dash. It cannot fail, to take us back, of course, to passage 1, every day in public appearing without fail. And this fail idea was good. We can come back to it again. The oration is to the orator. He obviously could have been thinking about the great Lincoln. The acting is to the actor and actress, not to the audience. Think about the game he's playing with Aristotle's Poetics and the idea that, again, the actors are up on stage acting, but the true action is actually out there in the audience. And the audience is going to reflect back in mirror-like. We've given full lectures on this at LearnStrong.net. But mirror-like, right? And the audience is actually the real drama, the true actors, and the actors are actually getting to witness that drama. And of course, any of us that have acted love to point out the energy exchange that happens there. And no man understands any greatness or goodness but his own or the indication of his own. You'll remember from passage 48 of Song of Myself, not God, not anyone. I've said that the soul is not more than the body, and that the body is not more than the soul, and no one, not even God, is greater to one than oneself is. This is compelling stuff. And then we jump right into passage 3 with 8 I swears. This is the I swear passage. Of course, the first use of this you'll remember is Song of Myself, passage 40. I swear I never will deny him. And then you'll remember as well in passage 47, a Song of Myself. And then as well, of course, Song of the Open Road, passage 1 with I swear. I swear the earth shall surely be complete to him or her who shall be complete. The earth remains jagged and broken only to him or her who remains jagged and broken. I love this idea. And of course, this idea of jagged takes us back to Rise, O Days, passage number 1. In other words, we see what we look for. What a brilliant insight by Whitman. If you go through life looking for pain and suffering and for betrayal, you're going to find it. It'll be easy to find it. If you go through life believing that everyone is, of course, nasty and mean and fallen and dejected, you're going to see that. But, again, the earth remains jagged and broken only to him or her who remains jagged and broken. Again, we don't call this blind optimism. We call it informed optimism, right? I swear, there's no greatness or power that does not emulate those of the earth. By the way, emulate, only other time used had I the choice. There can be no theory of any account unless it corroborate the theory of the earth. No politics, song, religion, notice this list, behavior, or whatnot, taking us back to Song of the Broad Axe, passage 5 with this whatnot, is of account unless it compare with the amplitude of the earth, unless it face the exactness, vitality, impartiality, rectitude of the earth. Notice those 4. And this word amplitude, by the way, from Song of Myself, passage 20, the amplitude of time. I think vitality is the key in that list. The energy is everything for Whitman, right? And then he goes to another, I swear. I swear, I begin to see love with sweeter spasms than that which responds love. It is that which contains itself, which never invites and never refuses. You'll, of course, remember spasms from Song of Myself, passage 43, right? And as well, a poem we'll meet later, O Star of France. I just want to turn to Norton's for a second. Norton's will remind us about this, line that Whitman sometimes coined an intransitive verb into a transitive verb. Actually, the translation of the Latin roots is transitive, i.e., to promise back love. So notice the brilliance of this when he says it. I swear I begin to see love with sweeter spasms than that which responds love is that which contains itself and which never invites and never refuses. I swear, and of course that idea of never refusing is we've seen already. I swear I begin to see little or nothing in audible words. All merges toward the presentation of the unspoken meanings of the earth, toward him who sings the songs of the body and the truths of the earth, toward him who makes the dictionaries of words that print cannot touch. Now, I will pause here for a moment and just remind us that T.S. Eliot's Four Quartets will play this game, and I think he learned how to play this game. Think about it, for example, with Bert Norton 5. Do you remember this? Words move. Music moves, only in time. But that which is only living can only die. Words after speech reach into the silence. Only by the form, the pattern, can words or music reach the stillness, as a Chinese jar still moves perpetually in its stillness. Not the stillness of the violin, while the note lasts. Not that only. But the coexistence, or say that the end precedes the beginning, and the end and the beginning were always there, before the beginning and after the end, and all is always now. Words strain, crack, and sometimes break under the burden, under the tension, slip, slide, perish, decay with imprecision, will not stay in place, will not stay still. Shrieking voices, scolding, mocking, or merely chattering, always assailed them. And then, of course, he says it, the word in the desert is most attacked by voices of temptation. Or how about this one in East Coker? We quoted these lines earlier. We love these lines, of course, in 303. That was a way of putting it, not very satisfactory. A paraphastic study in a worn-out poetical fashion, leaving one still with the intolerable wrestle with words and meanings. The poetry does not matter. It was not to start again what one had expected. Or how about East Coker 5? This is maybe for us one of the one of the favorite ones when he says it. So here I am in the middle way, having had 20 years largely wasted the years of l'entre de guerre, trying to learn to use words, and every attempt is a wholly new start and a different kind of failure because one has only learned to get the better of words. For the thing one no longer has to say, or the way in which one is no longer disposed to say it. And so each venture is a new beginning, arrayed on the inarticulate with shabby equipment, always deteriorating in the general mess of imprecision of feeling, undisciplined squads of emotion. I find this compelling to see these connections. He says it this way, I swear, now to finish, I swear what is better than to tell the best. And notice how he uses this word best now, again and again and again. The best. It is always to leave the best untold. And I think this is what great poets do. I think this was what Shelley was saying in defense of poetry. We've lectured that elsewhere. The greatest artists, they don't tell everything. Just like Whitman doesn't tell everything. Emily Dickinson is obviously our greatest example in poetry of that. When I undertake to tell the best, I find I cannot. My tongue is ineffectual on its pivots, sounding very much, of course, like the lines we just read of T.S. Eliot's. My breath will not be obedient to its organs. I become a dumb man. The best of the earth cannot be told anyhow. All of it is best. It's not what you anticipated. It's cheaper, easier, nearer. Things are not dismissed from the places they held before. The earth is just as positive and direct as it was before. And then he gives 5. Facts, religions, improvements, politics, trades are as real as before, but the soul is also real, and 2 is positive and direct. No reasoning, no proof has established it. Undeniable growth, might be the most important word in all of Lisa Grass, growth, has established it. And then he finishes in passage 4. These 2 echo the tones of souls and the phrases of souls. You'll remember this from Bert Norton again. My words echo thus in your mind. If they did not echo the phrases of souls, what were they then? In other words, the great art always resonates with the soul, with the heart, right? And if it doesn't, what's the point of it? If they had not reference to you in a special, what were they then? In other words, Whitman is pointing it out. If I can't connect with you, he says, at the most fundamental level, can we call it soul level? Then what's the point? It's useless. Art that doesn't connect at that level is useless. It's a compelling idea. I swear, one more with the I swear lines, right? I swear, I will never henceforth have to do with the faith that tells the best. I will have to do only with the faith that leaves the best untold. Now, I cannot help but imagine that he's smiling as he plays this game. He's obviously calling into question the idea of orthodoxy that's going to give us all the ideas and all the truths, but notice he uses the word leaves. And just to remind, this is a poem that is set in a book called Leaves of Grass. Say on, sayers, and notice all these 5 of these exclamation points as he finishes with this. I think he's finishing with a lot of jubilation. Say on, sayers, sing on, singers, delve, only time it gets used in all of Leaves of Grass, delving, digging. Mold, pile the words of the earth, work on, age after age, nothing's to be lost. It may have to wait long, but it will certainly come in use. And of course we think of poets to come, right? When the materials are all prepared and ready, the architect shall appear. I swear to you, the architect shall appear without fail. I swear to you, they will understand you and justify you. And of course here, for those of us that know our Milton's Paradise Lost, to justify the ways of God to men, we've given full lectures on it at Armstrong. The greatest among them shall be he who best knows you. Obviously, Whitman will believe himself that. And encloses all and is faithful to all. His inclusivity is obvious. He and the rest shall not forget you. They shall perceive that you are not an iota less than they. You shall be fully glorified in them. Now the fact that he's going to use this kind of Christian Christ speak with glorified just makes this poem even that much more radical, because of course we're playing the game of logos. It's quite a remarkable, phenomenal offering that we're studying here. At 2a, of course, with themes and messages, again, we see or we find what we are looking for, and obviously the word or the logos is translinguistic. It can't be put into words. It's silly to even try. You'll remember, of course, that in the Tao Te Ching, the Tao that can be named is not the true Tao, the name that can be named is not the true name, right? At 2b, I love this echoing of I swear, I swear, I swear, and we'll begin to look for more of these kinds of echoings, obviously, in our study of Leaves of Grass. At 3a, I've already mentioned T.S. Eliot's 4 quartets. Go back and, after your study of Leaves of Grass, and rework those sets of lines from the 4 quartets. We've given full lectures to help you kind of get there. Finally, to finish now, our Song of the Rolling Earth at 3b. Do you think it is in fact true, the argument that Whitman is making, that we actually see or we actually find what it is we are looking for in others? Do you think that's true, and that we end up almost like a mirror, and whatever it is that our own doubts often are going to be projected? Do you agree with that? Obviously Freud and Jung both had a lot to say about that. Or do you think this whole idea, another question, do you think this whole idea of what he's saying is kind of silly, that the greatest art has to speak to the most innermost parts of you, or do you find that to be a dubious argument? And finally, what about this idea, and obviously Chomsky and Wittgenstein both played around with this notion a lot, what about the idea that, well, if words have individual meaning, then how do they ever have collective meaning? How do we get to learn to play the language game? And I think Whitman is playing that one as well. Well, we now move on to the last of this section before we hit the next section, Youth, Day, Old Age, and Night. It's a strange little 4-line poem that I think in some ways summarizes a whole lot of all of these songs, and then we'll get on to the last of the songs, Song of the Universal. I hope you're being challenged. Thank you.